the fake wanted poster, and the proposal in the ashes. They say the Wild West belonged only to the strong. But this story begins with the weakest, a poor widow and her 2 small children. In the heart of a blizzard, they saved a stranger, never knowing he carried a hidden war on his shoulders. They only knew his name was Ethan, until a dirt-stained wanted poster surfaced, calling him a murderer. And yet, this very man, through gunfire, blood, and tears, would one day kneel with a worn old ring and ask the most desperate woman in town to be his wife. This isn't just a fight against injustice. It's the journey of finding family amid the ashes. Winter of 1875 on the Wyoming plains was a predator, merciless, gnawing at every scrap of life. Wind howled through the cracks of a crooked cabin where widow Anna Whitfield fought to keep her children warm. Clara, 10 years old, but carrying the weight of a grown woman in her eyes, and Jacob, 8, trying to stand braver than his thin frame allowed. Their world survived on a few starving milk cows, a near-empty chicken coop, and a wheat field now buried half in ice. The bank's final warning lay heavy in Anna's chest. 3 months before foreclosure. By day, she kept her face steady for the children. By night, she knelt at a splintered bed frame and begged for a miracle. But this winter carried no miracles, only hunger, only cold that clawed the marrow. That evening, the sky turned black in a breath. Storm clouds rolled, heavy and churning. Anna snatched the last sticks of firewood, while Clara dragged Jacob and a basket of grain indoors. Wind scoured the prairie raw, driving snow like knives. The silence pressed thick, broken only by rattling shutters and the moan of timber. Then Jacob screamed from the wheat field's edge, voice sharp as broken glass. "Ma! Clara, come quick! Somebody's out here!" Anna's heart lurched. Through the white blur, she saw her boy waving, pointing. Clara ran, skirts whipping in the gale. Anna followed, scarf tight, pulse hammering. There he lay. A man, broad-shouldered, cloaked in once fine fabric now drenched in blood. His black stallion lay dead beside him, saddle trimmed with Mexican silver. No common drifter. Red spread fast through the snow beneath his chest. His breaths rattled shallow as winter tried to steal the last warmth from him. Clara clutched her mother's hand, whispering, "Ma, is he alive?" Anna dropped to her knees, rough fingers trembling against his neck. A pulse. Frail, fluttering like a bird in the storm. Fear twisted with pity. On these plains, every day was a fight with hunger and weather. Yet here was a dying man at her feet. She knew she couldn't walk away. Snow roared harder, dragging at them, urging retreat. Still, Anna held the stranger's hand, a strange certainty burning inside. This moment would change everything. The wind shrieked, burying prairie and people alike. Anna thought of the last cornmeal in the bin, the final sticks of wood, her children shivering in their cabin. Now fate had dropped another burden at their door, a wounded man. Clara's eyes searched her mother's face. Jacob stammered, tugging her sleeve. "Ma, if we bring him in, we'll starve." Anna's chest ached. Sense said leave him. But in her heart she heard William, her late husband. He would never abandon a soul like this. She bit her lip. "We can't let him die. Help me together." They dragged him through the storm, each step a war against the wind. When the cabin door groaned open, it shuddered with the gale. They laid him on William's old bed, the wool blanket still carrying the scent of smoke. Anna stripped the bloody coat, revealing a chest mapped with scars. The makeshift bandage was soaked crimson. His face, weathered, beard rough, but carved with stubborn lines. His lips moved, a breath whispering one word, "Ethan." The name hung fragile as his breath. Then he collapsed, chest rising like a thread unraveling. Anna boiled water, tore rags from her own dress, poured the last of their whiskey into wounds. Clara pressed cloth against bleeding, while Jacob stoked the fire with desperate arms. For a moment, the cabin burned alive with the poor family's fierce refusal to yield. Then, a metallic thud on the floorboards. Something had fallen from his coat. They looked down, a silver pocket watch gleaming in the firelight. Anna picked it up, heart pounding as the flames revealed the engraving. To E.H., with eternal love. Mary, the cabin froze. Clara's eyes went wide. Ma, what does it mean? Anna clutched the watch, mind reeling. This was no ordinary stranger broken in the snow. He carried secrets, love, pain, a past that now lay squarely in their home. Outside, the blizzard screamed. But inside Anna's chest, a different storm was rising. That night stretched on like it had no end. The wind howled against the eaves, the blizzard hammered the boards, and the little cabin creaked like a fragile boat lost in a white sea. Inside, the fire guttered low, casting long shadows that wrapped around a widow, her 2 children, and the stranger lying unconscious in William's old bed. Anna sat close, her rough hands never still, changing bandages, pressing against the bleeding wound. The sharp sting of whiskey filled the room, tangled with the smoke of burning wood. Each time Ethan, his name, the only word he managed before passing out, groaned. It cut into Anna's fragile calm like a knife. Clara, curious and wide-eyed at 10, perched nearby, ears straining at every ragged breath. Near midnight, Ethan began to drift into fevered dreams. His voice rasped, but the words came sharp enough to chill the air. Mary, don't go. Circle J. They'll take it all. Clara's eyes darted to her mother, a mix of fear and fascination. Ma, he said Mary. Who's that? And Circle J. Isn't that the richest ranch around here? Anna pressed a finger to her lips, silencing her daughter. Unease coiled inside her chest. She knew of Circle J, its prize horses, its fertile land, its feuds whispered between powerful ranchers. If this man was tied to that place, his fall into their snowdrift wasn't chance. Just listen, Clara. Don't ask. The less we know, the safer we are. But her hand inside her cloak clenched tight around the silver watch. Jacob stirred in his chair as Ethan mumbled again, words broken but heavy. Must protect it, Blackthorn. Then silence. The name froze Anna's blood. Blackthorn, a ruthless land baron who stripped desperate families of their farms, a man who left ruin in his wake. Clara whispered, Ma, what if he's one of the bad men? Anna's eyes lingered on Ethan's scarred face, the long, pale lines slashing across cheek and throat, the marks of battles fought and survived. She felt something stir, something deeper than fear. This was no ordinary drifter. Beneath the hard lines lay weariness, loss, and a story carved by fire and blood. Outside, the storm shrieked. Inside, Anna squeezed her daughter's hand, staring into the wavering firelight. She was torn, between protecting her children and a gnawing sense that this scarred stranger carried a storm greater than any blizzard. Morning came without warmth. The prairie lay drowned under drifts of snow, and the wind slipped through the cabin cracks like a ghost's whisper. Ethan still lay unconscious, breath shallow, face pale. Anna, sleepless, forced herself to rise, to light the fire again, to stir a thin porridge for the children. Clara stepped out with a basin of water and froze. The steady beat of hooves rolled across the frozen ground, low and grim, like a drum announcing trouble. Anna tightened her shawl and stepped to the porch. Through the frost-hazed dawn, 3 riders emerged, coats heavy with snow, hats pulled low to hide their eyes. They reined up before the cabin, gazes cutting like blades over the sagging roof and broken walls. The leader spoke, voice rough as gravel. "We're looking for a big man." "Fine cloak. Rode a black horse. He's hurt. He came through here." Anna's heart pounded, but her face did not waver. Drawing on every ounce of strength left to a widow, she stood straight and met their eyes. "There's only me and my 2 children here." No one else. Jacob peeked from behind her, worry etched on his small face. Clara tugged him back inside, busying herself with the fire as if nothing was wrong. The horseman sat silent, long and heavy. One swept his eyes toward the leaning cattle shed. His mouth curled in a half-smirk. Then, without a word, he jerked his reins and turned away. The 3 rode off slowly, but not before casting one last cold look at the cabin, as though they could see straight through its walls. Their hoofbeats faded into the storm. Anna let out a trembling breath. Her knees shook, but she forced herself steady, shut, the door hard against the wind. Turning back, her eyes caught something new. On the porch beam, carved deep into the raw wood, was a fresh X. Her fingers touched the mark, cold and rough. It wasn't mischief. It was a sign, a warning, a claim. They had marked her home. Fear welled up sharp in Anna's chest. The stranger lying in her bed was no ordinary wanderer. His secrets had drawn the hunt right to her door. And now her family was caught in it. No turning back. Anna pulled her shawl tight, eyes falling on Clara and Jacob. Fear pressed hard, but one truth rose stronger. She could not falter. The blizzard outside might pass, but another storm, crueler, deadlier, had just begun to knock at her door. Inside the cramped wooden cabin, the first pale light of morning slipped through the cracks, falling across the face of the man lying pale and still in the bed. Anna sat beside him, her mind still echoing with the memory of hoofbeats and the carved X burned into her porch beam the night before. Suddenly, a harsh cough tore the silence, and she jolted upright. Ethan's eyes opened, gray, weary, but sharp with the guardedness of a man who had lived too long with danger. He pushed himself up despite the wound burning in his chest. Anna moved to stop him, but he shook his head, his voice low, steady. "You saved me. I owe you my life." In the thin light, the scars were clear now, deep tracks across his shoulders and arms, the map of years spent in fights too brutal to count. The marks told their own story. This was no ordinary wanderer lost on the prairie. "Who are you?" Anna demanded, suspicion rough in her voice. "And why are men hunting you?" Ethan hesitated. His gaze shifted toward Clara and Jacob by the hearth, then back to Anna. No more hiding. "My name is Ethan Hale. I'm not a drifter. I am the owner of Circle J Ranch." The words hit like a hammer. Circle J, the richest spread in Wyoming. Everyone in town knew it. Its blooded horses, its endless acres, its shadows of greed and whispered feuds. Ethan drew a breath, as though steadying himself. "Silas Blackthorne was once my partner. Together we built Circle J from nothing. But his hunger for more turned him into an enemy. He wants it all, land, cattle, power, leaving me with nothing but ashes." His voice grew rough, his eyes unwavering. "I still have proof of what he's done. False deeds, forged contracts that forced families off their land, evidence of killers he's paid. That's why they're after me. Because if I live to speak, Blackthorne falls." Anna's hands tightened in her lap, her heart racing. Part of her wanted to believe him. The raw honesty in his eyes was hard to deny. Yet she remembered the riders at her door, their cold stares, the carved X, the danger they promised. Could she trust the polished calm of this man, or was it just another mask? Ethan lowered his head. I don't expect you to believe me outright. But if I die, the truth dies with me, and Blackthorn will bleed this land. Dry wind moaned through the gaps in the walls, carrying his confession like a curse. Anna wavered, torn between doubt and the faint flicker of faith that had kindled in her chest. That afternoon, the snow stopped, leaving a gray sky heavy above the mucked trail into town. Jacob, restless and curious, begged to stretch his legs. He promised to stay near the old schoolhouse a few miles off. When he returned, cheeks burning from the cold, he clutched a crumpled paper, his eyes wide. Ma, look at this. His voice shook as he handed it over, eyes flicking toward Ethan's bed. Anna unfolded it and froze. The faded sheet carried a face she could not mistake. The hollow eyes, the scar carved down his cheek. Beneath it, in bold print, wanted, dead or alive. Ethan Hale, outlaw, murderer. Anna's hand trembled, the paper quivering with it. Everything Ethan had confessed, Circle J, Blackthorn, was drowned beneath those black words. The man who had spoken so calmly that morning now stared back from a wanted poster as a killer. Behind her, Clara's voice cracked. Ma, does that mean he's really… Anna's mouth opened, but no answer came. Her mind split in two, one side remembering Ethan's eyes, steady, pleading with truth, the other staring at the damning proof in her hands. Had she brought a wolf into her home, to sleep inches from her children? As if sensing the storm in the room, Ethan's voice came, calm but heavy. You found it, didn't you? Anna spun, anger and fear sharp in her words. So it's true? You're wanted for murder? I gave you shelter, let my children near you, and all the while you're an outlaw with blood on your hands? Ethan forced himself upright, blood seeping again at his chest, but his gaze did not falter. His hand lifted slowly. Anna, that poster, it's a lie. A weapon Blackthorn forged to destroy me. His fist clenched, his voice tight but burning with conviction. He knows I hold the proof of his crimes. He couldn't kill me in daylight, so he branded me an outlaw, turned the law and every gunman in Wyoming against me. It's how he'll break me, how he'll steal Circle J. The fire popped in the hearth, its light carving every line of doubt into Anna's face. She wanted to believe, but the poster weighed heavy in her hand. Clara slipped her fingers into her mother's, whispering, Ma, he's telling the truth. I feel it. Ethan's voice lowered, steady and unflinching. I've never killed an innocent soul. But if you drive me out now, Blackthorn will come here. He'll do to you what he's done to a dozen other families, leave nothing but smoke and graves. Anna crushed the poster in her fist until it nearly tore. Inside her raged a storm fiercer than any blizzard outside. To trust the law's ink, or to trust the eyes of a stranger whose life she now held in her hands. In the days that followed the discovery of the wanted poster, the air inside the little cabin began to shift. Ethan, though still wounded, forced himself from the bed and stepped into the rhythm of daily life. He didn't act like a stranger receiving charity. He worked like a man intent on carrying his share. Slowly, Clara and Jacob, who had once eyed him with suspicion, began to edge closer, curiosity warming into trust. One frosty morning, as the snow outside thinned to a brittle crust, Ethan led a colt from the shed. He patted its mane, smiled, then turned to the children. Ever been taught to ride proper? Jacob's eyes lit up, wide and eager. Clara hesitated. Ethan moved with patience, showing them how to set the saddle, how to hold the reins, how to sit tall and move with the horse. When Jacob climbed on, awkward and trembling, Ethan walked beside him, one hand steadying the boy, the other guiding the reins. The horse paced carefully over the snowy yard, and Jacob's laughter rang bright, carrying farther than the town's church bells. Clara, older in spirit than her years, had resisted at first. But when she saw her brother's joy, she yielded, took the reins herself. For the first time in many months, her eyes shone not with worry, but with the innocence of a child again. Later, back inside, Ethan drew out a small knife and began whittling. Jacob sat close, eyes fixed on the curl of each shaving. Bit by bit, the block of wood became a hawk. Ethan handed it over with a quiet smile. "Keep it. A man ought to use his hands to make something, not only to break." From the hearth, Anna watched in silence. The image pierced her heart. Steady hands teaching, a voice patient with children. William had done the same once. Pain knifed through her chest, yet alongside it flickered a warmth she hadn't felt in years. That evening, after a supper of cornbread and salted meat, Ethan spread paper and pencil on the table, teaching Clara the sums and ledgers ranchers lived by. She bent close, careful in her writing, while Jacob's interruptions brought bursts of laughter. The cabin, once so heavy with silence, filled with sound, life stirring where despair had dwelt. Then it happened. As Ethan leaned over to correct Clara's figures, Jacob blurted without thinking, "Papa, I don't understand this part." The room froze. Clara's eyes flew wide. Anna's hand slipped, the spoon clinking against the wooden table. Ethan lifted his head, startled. Then, slowly, he set a gentle hand on Jacob's shoulder. Anna's breath caught. That single word, "Papa," tore at the deepest part of her, reopening the ache of William's absence, yet stirring too a trembling hope, the fragile sense of family, patched together like old cloth. By late afternoon, the sky turned savage. Clouds rolled heavy and dark, swirling like ink spilled across the heavens. The wind rose, carrying dust and ash from the valley hearths. Anna stepped onto the porch, shawl wrapped, tight, unease gnawing at her chest. A low roar deepened across the prairie. "Tornado," Ethan growled, eyes sharp. Wounded or not, he surged to his feet. "We have to brace the stockyard before it hits. Move." Chaos broke loose. Wind screamed, tearing boards and flinging barrels like toys. Jacob, pale with fear, clutched the planks Ethan thrust into his hands. Clara tied the chicken coop doors shut, hair whipped wild in the gale. Ethan barked orders through the storm, his voice steady, commanding. "Anna, fetch more rope. Jacob, hold fast. Clara, keep low. Don't let the wind take you." With his chest still bound in white bandages, every word cost him, but his certainty poured strength into them all. The cyclone hit full force, rattling the cattle shed until it leaned like a drunkard ready to fall. Anna cried out, but Ethan hurled himself at the main beam, bracing it with his body. Blood seeped dark against his shirt. Jacob, tears streaming, rushed beside him, shouting above the roar, "I'll help, Papa!" His small hands joined Ethan's, straining, pushing. For a heartbeat, boy and man stood as one wall against the storm. At last, the wind broke, the sky easing its grip. Silence returned, heavy and raw. Fences lay splintered, the porch torn away, but the sheds still stood, and the herd lived. Anna collapsed, clutching her children, sobbing with relief and terror both. Ethan sank to the dirt, gasping, his sweat mingled with blood. Anna looked at him, a surge of awe rising inside. In those moments of life and death, she saw it clear. His strength was not just in muscle, but in the way he held others together. He was no longer a stranger. He had become the pillar they leaned on. That night, while the others slept, Anna tidied the cabin. She lifted Ethan's heavy coat to hang it by the door. Something fell, a stack of folded papers. She stooped, picked them up. Her heart jolted. A contract. The sale of Circle J Ranch. The seal was red, the script clean, and across the bottom, Ethan Hale's signature. But as she stared, her breath faltered. The handwriting was wrong. Forced, uneven, nothing like the neat figures Ethan had written for Clara. It was a forgery. Her hands trembled as she clutched the page. Proof that Silas Blackthorne had gone further than lies and posters. He had already forged the papers to steal it all. Anna stood frozen, fear and confusion twisting through her. The truth was uncoiling at last, and it was more dangerous than any storm. That night, the prairie lay heavy under a sky without a moon. The wind cut sharp through the fields, and Anna woke with a jolt to the stench of smoke seeping through every crack in the cabin walls. She sprang up just as Clara screamed, pointing toward the window. Outside, flames leapt skyward, red tongues clawing at the heavens like bloodthirsty beasts. "Fire!" Clara cried. Ethan was already on his feet, eyes flashing steel despite his unhealed wound. Through the smoke and glow, he saw riders darting in and out of the blaze. He didn't need to guess. He knew Silas had struck. "To the cattle shed! It's the strongest ground we've got," Ethan barked, his voice cutting through the roar of the storm. Anna and the children ran, joined by neighbors drawn by the fire. The cattle shed, reinforced after the last twister, stood like a fortress against the night. They poured inside as gunfire cracked, bullets splintering the walls. "Hold steady!" Ethan shouted, rifle braced against his shoulder. "Don't let them break your spirit!" Shots thundered. A bullet tore through the slats and slammed into Ethan's shoulder. He staggered, blood blooming across his worn shirt. Anna rushed to him, but he ground his teeth, one hand clamped on the wound, while the other jammed her back. "Keep firing!" "Don't you stop!" Clara sobbed as she reloaded for her mother, her small hands trembling, yet her eyes shone fierce. Jacob crouched low, his mind racing back to Ethan's words. "Don't just fire. Think. Land holds secrets if you know where to look." Peering through a gap, Jacob saw the flames crawling toward the wheat field, the family's only lifeline. Then it struck him. He tugged Anna's sleeve, breathless. "Ma, the old irrigation ditch. Ethan said it runs to the North Creek. If we break it open, the water will flood the field." Ethan, blood soaking his arm, gave a grim nod. "Go! Lead them, boy!" Anna cried out. "He's too young!" But Jacob was already running, two neighbors at his side, shovels and picks in hand. Bullets whined past, but they clawed at the frozen earth, prying open the dry channel. Water burst forth, rushing across the burning field. Steam rose in a hiss, swallowing the fire's advance. From inside the shed, they saw the blaze die under the flood, and cheers broke loose. Ethan, pale with blood loss, still managed a proud smile. "Well done, my son." Outside, Silas saw his plan collapse. He spurred his men harder, gunfire raining against the shed, but the spirit inside had changed. Farmers no longer cowered. They fought back as one. The night thundered with fire and bullets, the air thick with smoke and blood. The flames were beaten back, but the riders of Silas still circled like wolves, tightening their noose. Inside, Anna held Clara close, her eyes locked on Ethan. He stood again, shoulder drenched crimson, but his hand rose, steady, commanding them all to hold. The raiders thought victory theirs. They charged, shouting, bullets tearing through boards. But then, a new sound shook the night, the pounding of hooves rolling like thunder from the east. "Circle J!" a neighbor shouted in disbelief. Through the smoke rode a dozen horsemen, their banner flashing a bold J within a circle. loyal men of Ethan, who had ridden hard through the night at word of the ambush. They stormed into the fray, rifles blazing, scattering Silas's ranks. "No!" a bandit cried as their line broke. Silas, astride his dark roan, face twisted with rage, snarled the order to retreat. His glare locked on Ethan like a curse before he wheeled into the night. In the chaos, one raider lunged at Anna, pistol raised. She froze, but a crack split the air. Clara stood, rifle smoking in her trembling hands. The bullet spat dust at the bandit's feet, and he dropped his gun, fleeing in terror. Anna pulled her daughter close, tears wetting her smile. The little girl who once clung to her skirts had stood tall, defending their home. Ethan saw it too, and through the haze of pain, pride lit his eyes. But then, a groan stirred from the corner. One outlaw, thought dead, lifted his head, eyes blazing red with hate. Blood bubbled at his lips as he rasped, "You fools! Silas doesn't just want land. He sold his soul for more. Whitfield is only bait. The whole town's already his." He collapsed, dead. Silence chilled the shed. Ethan gripped his gun tight, his voice low and grim. He's right. Silas isn't acting alone. There's power behind him. Power enough to turn marriage into a weapon. Before the words settled, a cold knock echoed on the shed door. Guns snapped up, fear taut. The door creaked open, revealing a tall figure in a long cloak and wide-brimmed hat. The town's post rider. But instead of mail, he bore a parchment sealed in red wax. He set it down, voice flat. "By order of the mayor of Ash Hollow, any who stand against Silas Blackthorne are hereby declared outlaws." The shed fell into a silence thicker than gun smoke. The fire had been beaten, but something darker had won. The law itself had been bought. Anna's hands shook as she clenched the outlaw's contract, fury burning through her fear. Ethan, blood dripping from his shoulder, rose to his feet. His eyes burned like fire. "We beat his flames and his bullets. But this is only the beginning. He won't need guns anymore. He'll use the law to chain us." Clara gripped her mother's hand, voice trembling yet strong. "If he uses the law to kill us, Mama, then we'll use the truth to destroy him." Anna kissed her daughter's forehead, then lifted her chin high. Her eyes no longer wavered. "Then so be it. If he thinks I'm a pawn, I'll make myself the blade. Silas will regret ever coming after this family." Dawn crept over the prairie, but no one felt its peace. For they all knew the war had left the fields. It was coming now to the heart of Ash Hollow, where darkness wore the mask of justice. After that night of fire and gunsmoke, Wyoming lay under a rare hush of peace. The dawn wind carried the scent of fresh grass, and the sky shimmered gold with the promise of new beginnings. The sheds had been rebuilt, the pasture slowly reborn thanks to the water Jacob had freed, and in the hearts of the people, faith itself seemed planted anew after standing against Silas. In the small wooden house, Anna sat by the window, hands folded, her mind wandering. She thought of William, her late husband, of those long years of loneliness and hunger, and of the moments Ethan had braced the shed post in the twister, or stood bleeding yet unbowed in the storm of bullets. Something deep within her whispered, this man was no passing guest. Fate had delivered him to her family's door. That afternoon, Ethan entered, his shoulder still bound in white cloth, but his bearing calm and steady. He carried an old silver ring, dulled with years, and knelt before her, his voice low and warm. This was William's wedding ring. I know he once meant everything to you, but today I ask to use it not as a replacement, but to carry love forward. to build a new chapter with you and the children." Anna's eyes brimmed, her breath caught. At that moment, Clara and Jacob stepped forward, carrying a small wooden box they had hidden away. Clara opened it with trembling hands. Inside lay a simple silver band, cushioned on a scrap of wildflower embroidery. Jacob's voice broke, yet rang strong. "Papa, this is our gift to you. From today on, you are no stranger." The room stilled. Ethan gripped their small hands, his eyes alight with a hope he thought long dead. Word of the wedding spread quickly. That day the sky was clear as glass, larks singing over the meadow. Beneath an old oak by the creek, neighbors gathered, those who had fought beside them against Silas. Their dresses were plain, their hats worn, but together they formed a picture sacred in its simplicity. Anna wore a modest white dress, her cheeks pink with life. Ethan, though in an old vest, stood tall and proud. When he slid William's ring onto Anna's hand and received the children's wildflower band in return, the crowd erupted in cheers and rifle shots to the sky, a frontier blessing on a new beginning. Amid the whisper of wheat swaying in the breeze, Anna leaned her head to Ethan's shoulder. "Now we are truly a family." "And a family," Ethan answered, voice thick with feeling. "That will stand through any storm." A year passed, and the land itself bore witness to change. The once shaken cabin now stood strong. Fenced pastures spread neat and green beneath the morning sun. At the gate, a wooden sign swayed in the wind. "Morning Glory Ranch," a tribute to both loss and renewal. In the bright kitchen, Anna opened an old leather-bound journal, her pen scratching steady lines. "A year ago we stood in fire and blood, barely alive. Today we have a home, a future, and faith to protect it. Morning Glory, the simple flower that blooms each dawn, is us, fragile yet unyielding." Jacob's laughter carried from the yard as he trained a band of young colts. Clara, taller now, read beneath the old oak, her brown hair gleaming in the sun. Ethan walked in, resting a steady hand on Anna's shoulder, his eyes filled with quiet joy. News of Silas Blackthorne had finally reached its end. After his disgrace, he was captured and brought before the Cheyenne court. His forgeries, his false contracts, even the letter forcing Anna's hand, exposed to all. When the sentence came, years behind bars, the townsfolk cheered, not only for his fall, but for justice at last. Anna looked through the window and smiled. Ethan was teaching Clara to draw a bow. Jacob cradled a pup from the new litter. The old ache in her heart was easing, replaced by a peace long denied. That evening, they gathered beneath the porch. Ethan strummed a battered guitar. Clara sang softly. Jacob beat rhythm on a barrel. Anna sat still, eyes shining as she watched the three beside her. Once hunted, once hungry, now bound as one family. She wrote the final line in her journal. "We have weathered storms. Now each morning is a new beginning. Like the morning glory, fragile yet steadfast, we will bloom again, no matter the rain." As the horizon burned red with sunset, Ethan wrapped an arm around Anna. Clara leaned against her mother, Jacob curled at his father's feet. And on the land of Morning Glory Ranch, faith, love, and hope grew strong, as resilient as the wildflowers dancing in the dawn wind. And that is the story of Morning Glory Ranch, how a poor widow's home became a place of love and faith. They endured snowstorms, fire, and gunfire, only to find their peace in the simple grace of family. It is not only a tale of romance, but of grit, unity, and hope blooming like the flowers of morning. What do you think? If you were Anna, would you have had the courage to open your heart to a man once branded an outlaw? And if you were Clara or Jacob, Would you have called a stranger Papa? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your voices. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Every word of encouragement helps keep these stories alive, carried across the prairie to hearts everywhere.